To boil it down in very simple terms, you manufacture a crisis and advocate a solution. Now, this is precisely what happened in 1968-69, when the liberals put up a so-called bill to protect the environment. It, too, was simply a huge expansion of the federal government. More government. It didn't pass. They put it up several times. It didn't pass. You remember what happened? Well, you lived through this. What happened was, all of a sudden, all around the world, tankers began sinking. There's an oil spill off England, a tanker breaking up off the coast of Scotland, a tanker breaking up off the coast of Canada, a tanker breaking up here, breaking up there. Oil pollution, and you got this stampede. We got to do something about the environment. And what happened? Richard Nixon created the EPA. Congress never passed it. Richard Nixon created that with a stroke of his pen. And as soon as he created the EPA, the tanker stopped sinking. Surprise. You make a crisis and advocate a solution. Now, you can see this tactic of creating a crisis and manufacturing a solution. And I actually was taught this a long time ago when I messed around with the communists. They always had a saying, and the saying was, the action is in the reaction. The action is in the reaction. In other words, the communist tactic is to prophesy about a so-called problem, manufacture the problem, create a crisis, and the measures taken to solve that problem are the measures used to enslave the American people. What you get is more government. Now, I would issue a challenge to you, the listener, and to you. The next time you're watching television and you listen to any newscaster or any so-called analyst telling us about a so-called problem, take a good look at him and watch. Listen, and you'll see that what he's advocating is an expanded government program or a new program to cope with this emergency. That's what they've been doing all the time. Now, the really tricky part about this is that these liberals, or should I say these communists, have developed long-range programs. They begin the propaganda way back here, years before. So they build up a bunch of so-called experts. And by the time they make the problem and advocate the solution, the so-called experts are the ones who get the appointments to Washington, D.C. You can see this with Schlesinger, James Schlesinger. When Schlesinger became a so-called energy czar, what was Schlesinger's claim to fame? Schlesinger's claim to fame is that years before, he had prophesied about a so-called energy shortage. So he became the czar. And this is what you have now. You have people prophesying about problems which they themselves are making, and then they get appointed to run the programs. Maybe the most devastating thing which has happened, which is why we have to stop the growth of government, the most devastating thing that's happened was the so-called World Trade Center bombing with this terrorism. As I said, Bill Clinton tried to pass the bill. All the prophecy had been made about terrorism, about the threat to Americans, etc. And when something finally happens, and I think everybody here knows that our government was primarily responsible for the creation of this terrorist group over there in Afghanistan. Absolutely no question about that. No one even denies it, that our government was responsible for that. Well, as soon as the crisis happened, you get the Congress being stampeded into giving the federal government more power, taking our liberties, our rights, and everything else.